Have you ever noticed something strange? The harder you try to keep everything stable, the more exhausted you feel. The more you think, the more anxious you become. The tighter you plan, the more fragile everything seems. Sit with that for a moment, because most people assume the problem is that they haven't planned well enough, or thought carefully enough, or held on tightly enough. So they try harder, and the weight grows heavier. But what if the exhaustion is not a sign that you're failing? What if it's a sign that something much deeper is asking to be looked at? Maybe life isn't painful because it is uncertain. Maybe it feels painful because you are trying to make what is always moving stay still. Like trying to hold water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the faster it slips away. Today, we are not learning how to control better. We are learning where to gently let go. There is a bonus lesson near the end of this video, something quieter than the others. Please stay with it. It may be the one your heart has been waiting for. Lesson 1. You are not your thoughts. Before we talk about control, we have to talk about where control begins. And it doesn't begin in your schedule. It doesn't begin in your relationships. It doesn't begin in your plans. It begins in the mind, in a single thought, in the story you are telling right now about what is happening. There are people who have lived their entire lives inside a storm that existed only in their own thinking, replaying conversations that ended years ago, rehearsing arguments that never happened, bracing for disasters that never arrived, and calling this mental labor preparation. You may recognize this. Maybe you wake up at 3 in the morning and the mind is already running, not because something is wrong, but because the mind has been trained to look for what could go wrong. It feels responsible that way, vigilant, safe. But here is what the Buddha observed more than 2,500 years ago, and what modern neuroscience is only beginning to catch up to. The mind does not simply reflect reality, it constructs it, and then it defends the construction as if it were the world itself. A thought appears, something bad is coming, and before you have taken your next breath, the mind has built a house around that thought, furnished the rooms, named the rooms, moved into the rooms, decided this is just how life is. You are not experiencing reality. You are experiencing the architecture of your own fear. There is something even more precise to say here. The mind does not just create one story, it creates a story that confirms what it already believes. If you have spent years believing that you are not quite enough, not quite safe, not quite deserving of peace, then every ambiguous moment will be interpreted through that lens. A friend who doesn't respond quickly becomes proof of rejection. A mistake at work becomes evidence of fundamental incompetence. A period of calm becomes cause for suspicion, because something must be about to go wrong. The Buddha called this papanka, the proliferation of the mind. One perception becomes a story. The story becomes a belief. The belief becomes a world you can no longer see outside of, and all of it constructed from thoughts that arrived, like weather, without your permission, and then stayed because no one taught you that you were allowed to let them pass. Thoughts arise like clouds crossing an open sky. Each one appears, moves, dissolves. But somewhere along the way, many of us stopped being the sky. We became the cloud. We forgot we were something larger, something that holds the weather without being destroyed by it. The neuroscientist would describe what happens next in clinical language. The amygdala signals danger. Stress hormones flood the body. The prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that sees clearly, goes offline. And suddenly, you are not thinking about the situation anymore. You are inside the situation, fully merged with the thought, with the story, with the fear. Buddhism does not ask you to stop having thoughts. It asks you to stop mistaking them for truth. There is a practice, simple but not easy, of pausing when anxiety rises. Not to solve anything, not to push the thought away, but to quietly ask, what is actually happening right now, and what is only a story? Not both at once, one or the other. You may discover that what is actually happening right now is manageable. It is only the story that is unbearable. But this is not yet the deepest layer, because even knowing that thoughts are stories does not always stop us from clinging to the story. That is what we look at next. Lesson 2. Control is fear in disguise. Here is something uncomfortable. You do not control because you are organized. You do not control because you are responsible. You do not control because you are strong. You control because you are afraid. Sit with that. Let it land without rushing to argue with it. There are people who manage every detail of their lives with extraordinary precision, their calendars, their relationships, their words, their image, and from the outside, this looks like capability, like strength. But underneath the scheduling and the planning and the careful presentation, there is almost always the same quiet voice. If I stop managing this, something will fall apart. If I stop watching, I will be blindsided. If I let go, even slightly, I will lose something I cannot afford to lose. Have you heard that voice? Maybe not in those exact words. Maybe yours sounds different. Maybe it says, I just need to make sure, or I want to be prepared, or I'm not anxious, I'm just being responsible. Those translations are so common, so reasonable sounding. We have learned to dress up the fear in practical language so that it doesn't alarm us, so that we don't have to look directly at what is underneath. The body already knows this, even before the mind admits it. Research on the nervous system tells us that when we feel unsafe, the body activates, shoulders rise, jaw tightens, breath becomes shallow, the chest constricts. These are not metaphors. These are measurable physical responses to a perceived threat. And chronic anxiety, the kind that doesn't switch off even when the external situation is calm, keeps the body in this half-activated state almost continuously. The body is always bracing for impact, not because danger is always present, but because the nervous system has been trained to expect it. And the mind follows the body, or perhaps the body follows the mind. In truth, they are not separate. The thought creates the tension. The tension creates the thought, a loop that requires no external event to keep running. The question is not whether you are afraid. Fear is human. Fear is ancient. Fear kept our ancestors alive. The question is whether fear has become the manager of your life. Buddhism teaches something that cuts deeper than most people expect. The need to control is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is an attempt to protect something. Often it is protecting an image of who we are, the person who holds everything together, the person who doesn't need help, the person who cannot afford to be seen as uncertain or vulnerable or lost. The control is a wall, and behind every wall is something tender. Ask yourself gently when you feel the need to manage and arrange and oversee and correct. Ask not what you are controlling, but what you are protecting. What are you afraid would be seen if you stopped? What would happen to the version of you that you have worked so hard to maintain? That question does not need an answer right now, only honesty enough to hold it. Lesson 3. Separate what is yours from what is not. There is a confusion at the center of most human suffering, and it is this. We have mistaken responsibility for control. You are responsible for your actions. You are not responsible for the entire outcome of the universe. These sound like the same thing. They are not. Somewhere along the way, many of us absorb the belief that if we care about something deeply enough, we should also be able to determine how it turns out. If we love someone, we should be able to protect them from all harm. If we work hard, we should be guaranteed the result. If we prepare carefully, we should be able to prevent anything from going wrong. And when things go wrong anyway, something in us concludes that we simply didn't try hard enough. That perhaps we should have planned more, worried more, controlled more. This is one of the cruelest patterns the mind can run, because it takes caring, which is one of the most beautiful qualities a person can have, and turns it into a source of endless guilt. You cared enough to try, but you didn't control the outcome, and so the mind decides. The caring was insufficient. Try harder. Hold tighter. Worry more deeply. But you cannot love someone enough to make them safe from life. You cannot work hard enough to guarantee a result that depends on 1,000 other causes. You cannot think carefully enough to prevent what impermanence has already decided. There are people who have been exhausted for years, not because life has asked too much of them, but because they have been carrying responsibility that was never theirs to carry, the outcomes of other people's journeys, the feelings other people choose to feel, the judgments that other people will make regardless of what is done. This is not compassion. This is something that looks like compassion and feels like love, but quietly costs everything. Buddhism draws a clear distinction between effort and attachment to outcome. The effort is yours. The outcome belongs to the universe, to causes and conditions far beyond any individual's reach, to timing you did not choose and cannot alter. You can speak honestly. You cannot control how another person hears your words. You can prepare carefully. You cannot guarantee what the morning will bring. You can love someone with everything you have. You cannot protect them from the lessons their own life has chosen to offer. Try something today, not as an exercise in detachment, but as an act of honesty. Draw a line, even just in your mind, between what genuinely belongs to you and what you have been carrying that belongs to something else. Your effort, your intention, your kindness, these are yours. The way things unfold in response, what others choose, what time decides to do next. Notice how much lighter your side of that line is. You were never supposed to carry the whole weight. You were only asked to carry your part. And still, there is something beneath this that we have not yet named. Lesson 4. Your body tells the truth first. We spend a great deal of time in this work speaking about the mind, about thoughts and stories and beliefs. But the body already knew something was wrong long before the mind formed the first sentence about it. Right now, without changing anything, notice your shoulders. Are they raised even slightly? Notice your jaw. Is it holding tension that you forgot to release? Notice your breath. Is it shallow? Is it reaching all the way down into your belly or stopping somewhere in the chest? Many people who have been living under chronic tension have completely forgotten what it feels like to be in a body that is not bracing. They have normalized the tightness. They have made the state of emergency their baseline. And from inside that state, they are trying to think their way to peace. But you cannot think your way to a nervous system that trusts. You can only breathe your way there, move your way there, feel your way there. Science has confirmed what meditating traditions observed long before the word neuroscience existed. Mental tension and physical tension are not separate. Research by Edmund Jacobson in the early 20th century showed that mental activity always accompanied an increase in muscular tension, and that reducing muscle tension had an immediate effect of decreasing anxiety. The body is not just carrying the mind. The body is part of the mind. Ajahn Chah, the beloved Thai forest monk who spent decades teaching both Eastern and Western students, was said to observe his students not first by listening to their questions, but by watching how they held their bodies. The body does not lie. The body shows where the clinging is. And what does chronic physical tension say? It says, I am still preparing for something bad. It says, I do not yet believe it is safe to release. It says, the danger I fear may arrive at any moment, so I am staying ready. You are not solving a problem when you are tightened this way. You are bracing for impact. Before you address anything else today, whether it is a difficult conversation, a difficult decision, a difficult feeling, try this first. Relax your shoulders, slowly, not because the tension means something is wrong with you, but because the body releasing is itself a message to the nervous system that safety is possible. Soften your jaw. Let your exhale be a little longer than your inhale, not to fix anything, to signal something. The releasing is not the practice. The releasing is permission to begin. Lesson 5. Stop rehearsing pain. There is a particular suffering that is invisible to almost everyone experiencing it. It is the suffering that has not yet arrived. You may have spent an entire afternoon in dread about a conversation scheduled for tomorrow, rehearsing what might go wrong, preparing your defenses, imagining the worst possible version of how it could unfold. And when tomorrow came, the conversation was difficult, yes, but survivable, even ordinary. But you suffered for a full day before it happened. You suffered twice. Worry is not preparation. Worry is rehearsal. And what we rehearse, the brain encodes. Research on what neuroscientists sometimes call anticipatory anxiety shows something quietly devastating. When we repeatedly imagine negative outcomes, the brain begins to treat the imagined outcome as experience. The stress response activates as if the feared event were actually occurring. The body prepares to deal with a threat that exists only in projection. You are not protecting yourself by doing this. You are training the mind and body to expect danger. Buddhism points to something similar in its teaching on papanka, a Pali word that refers to the mind's tendency to proliferate, to take a single perception and spin it outward into an elaborate web of story, judgment, and anticipation. The Buddha observed that most of our suffering is not created by events but by the mind's commentary on events. And the commentary, once started, can run indefinitely. Planning has a natural end. Worry does not. You can identify the difference by asking one question. Is this thinking producing something useful? Is it clarifying something, deciding something, preparing something concrete? Or is it simply spinning, returning to the same feared image in slightly different forms, producing nothing except more dread? If it is the latter, what you are doing is practicing suffering. One practice that genuinely helps is giving the mind a boundary, a specific time each day for what could be called reflective thinking, to think through what is true, what is uncertain, what can be acted upon, and what cannot. And then, outside of that time, when the anxious thinking returns, to gently say, "Not now, this has already been considered." Return to this moment. You do not need to suffer in advance. The present moment almost always turns out to be more manageable than the future you imagined. But we are still not at the deepest place. There is something older than all of this that we have not yet touched. Lesson 6. Impermanence is not your enemy. Say this slowly to yourself. Everything changes. Everything. Not just the difficult things, not just the things you want to release, but also the beautiful things, the relationships that feel essential, the health you are counting on, the version of yourself you have worked so hard to build. And also, the suffering changes. Also, the fear changes. Also, the unbearable pain that today feels like it will last forever. This is the first of what Buddhism calls the 3 marks of existence, anicca, impermanence. The Buddha taught it not as a cause for despair, but as the most liberating truth available to a human being. Because if everything changes, then nothing, not even your current suffering, is permanent. And if nothing is permanent, then what you are clinging to, what you are fighting to keep stable and fixed and safe, is already, in this very moment, moving. Here is something worth sitting with for longer than feels comfortable. The fact that everything changes does not only apply to the outer world, it applies to the self. The one you have been so carefully protecting and maintaining and presenting to the world. That self is also in motion, also impermanent, also composed of causes and conditions that are continuously shifting. Pema Chodron, one of the most clear-voiced Western teachers of Buddhist wisdom, put it with characteristic directness. Our discomfort, she wrote, arises from all of our efforts to put ground under our feet. To realize our dream of constant okayness, we resist change. And when we resist what is always already changing, we call that resistance by a familiar name. We call it suffering. Most people believe they are afraid of impermanence because it means loss. And it does. But underneath that fear of loss is something more specific, a fear that without the things we are holding on to, we will not know who we are. That identity itself requires stability, that the self needs solid ground in order to exist. But what if the self is not as solid as it appears? Every cell in your body is continuously being replaced. The thoughts you are having right now did not exist 3 minutes ago. The person you were at 40 is not the person reading these words today. We cling to a fixed idea of who we are, Pema Chodron wrote, and it cripples us. Not because identity is unimportant, but because when identity becomes rigid, it loses the very flexibility that allows it to grow into something wiser, softer, more real. We resist change not because we fear losing what is outside us. We resist change because we fear losing ourselves. And this is where the real work begins. If winter never ended, spring could never arrive. And if you never change, if nothing about you is ever allowed to dissolve or be remade, then nothing new in you can emerge. Each morning, before the day begins to ask things of you, try this. Just whisper it. Not as a mantra, not as performance. Whisper it as a fact, as a reminder of what is always already true. This too will change. Not to dismiss what is happening, but to remember that you are not trapped inside it. Lesson 7. Let life teach you. Here is a shift so simple it almost sounds naive. And yet it changes everything. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Ask, what is this teaching me? Not because everything happens for a grand cosmic reason you are expected to decode. Not because suffering is a gift wrapped in pain, but because the question itself changes the direction your mind is facing. One question faces backward and inward, searching for blame or fate or punishment. The other faces forward, into curiosity, into learning, into something that might be useful. When you ask, "Why is this happening to me?" you are a victim of your circumstances. When you ask, "What is this teaching me?" you become a student of your life. Buddhism does not promise that everything happens for a reason in the way many modern spiritual teachings suggest. What it does observe is that everything can become a teacher if we allow it. The difficult colleague can teach patience. The relationship that ended can teach self-knowledge. The failure can teach resilience. The loss can teach what actually matters. Not because the difficult things are good, but because the mind that meets them with curiosity instead of resistance will learn from them. And the mind that learns does not have to repeat the same pain indefinitely. Notice what is asking to be learned right now, not in some abstract future version of yourself who has finished healing and arrived somewhere permanent, but right now, in this season of your life, with these particular challenges. What has come forward that you did not choose, but can choose how to meet? What layer is being asked to dissolve? What might be emerging underneath? Lesson 8. Acceptance is not passivity. Something needs to be said clearly here, because a misunderstanding can cause real harm. When we speak about letting go, about acceptance, about releasing the need to control, people sometimes hear something else. They hear give up, they hear do nothing, they hear become passive and let the world do whatever it wants to you. That is not what any of this means. Acceptance, in the Buddhist sense, does not mean approval. It does not mean surrender to injustice. It does not mean that suffering is fine and you should simply endure it. Acceptance means this: stop fighting reality as a starting point. Because here is the thing about fighting reality. Reality always wins, not because reality is cruel, but because what is already true does not require your permission to be true. And every ounce of energy you spend insisting that things should be different from what they already are is energy unavailable for actually changing them. There are people who have spent years in furious argument with what has already happened, unable to move forward not because the path was blocked, but because they could not stop looking back at the place where things went wrong, rehearsing how it should have been different, refusing to accept that it wasn't. The river of your life cannot flow forward while you are upstream, trying to push the current in the other direction. Acceptance means, this is what is true right now, not forever, not what I want to be true, not what I deserved, simply what is actually, presently, true. From that ground, you can act wisely, you can move, you can change what can be changed, release what cannot, and clearly see the difference between the two. You cannot swim against the river forever, but you can learn how to move within its current. And sometimes that is where you discover where the river was always trying to take you. We are getting close now. Something genuine and quiet is waiting. Lesson 9. Return to this breath. Everything in these lessons has pointed toward the same place. Not a concept, not a practice you perform on a cushion and then set aside. A place you can return to in any moment, including this one. Right now. Not after you have figured out your life, not after the fear passes, not after you have become a calmer, wiser, more enlightened version of yourself. Right now. This breath. This is what Ajahn Chah meant when he said, in that disarming and direct way of his. If you let go a little, you will have a little peace. If you let go a lot, you will have a lot of peace. If you let go completely, you will have complete peace. Complete peace is not the absence of difficulty. It is the absence of the war inside yourself about difficulty. Buddhism is not offering you a life without change, without loss, without moments that bring you to your knees. The teaching of anicca, impermanence, is precisely that those things will come, that everything comes, and everything passes, and the awareness that holds both the coming and the passing is what you are, not the cloud, the sky. Think about that for a moment. The sky does not struggle with the storm. It does not clench itself against the thunder. It does not wait anxiously for the clouds to finally clear. It simply holds. It holds the storm and the calm and the rain and the blue and the grey and the light of early morning, all of it, without preference, without resistance. The storm passes not because the sky fought it. The storm passes because that is what storms do. You are the sky. You have always been the sky. The thoughts, the fears, the difficult seasons of life, these are the weather. And weather changes, always changes, has always been changing, will always change. Your practice is not to prevent the weather. Your practice is to remember what you are. You do not need to control your whole life today. You only need to be present for this moment. When the mind runs ahead to the terrifying version of next week, gently say, "Not now." Return to the breath, to the feet on the ground, to the simple fact that right now, in this actual moment, you are breathing. The room around you is real. The air is real. The quiet under all the noise is real. This moment is manageable. It has always been manageable. It is only in our imagination of the accumulation of all possible future moments that the weight becomes crushing. But you will not face all possible future moments at once. You will face this one and then the next one. And in each single moment, something in you already knows what to do. The wisdom you are searching for is not somewhere ahead of you. It is here, under the stillness, under the noise, already present, already enough, already yours. Bonus lesson, the hardest, letting go. We have talked about releasing control over circumstances, over outcomes, over the thoughts that tell frightening stories about what is coming. But there is a letting go that is harder than all of these, and almost no one talks about it. It is the letting go of the version of yourself you have been trying to be, not the version you actually are, the version you have been maintaining, managing, protecting, the version that holds everything together, that never asks for too much, that performs competence and strength and stability, even when inside there is a tiredness that runs very deep. Pema Chodron writes about this with unusual honesty. We cling to a fixed idea of who we are, and it cripples us. Not because identity is a bad thing, but because the self is not actually fixed. It is as impermanent as everything else. It is a river, not a stone. And when we try to keep it stone, we are in constant, subtle conflict with our own nature. Think about the energy required to maintain a consistent presentation of yourself across all the moments of your day. The energy of never quite being at rest, of always monitoring how you appear, what impression you are making, whether you are living up to the image you have constructed. What would it feel like to put that down, even for a moment? Not to abandon all identity, not to become formless or lost, but to simply stop performing the version of yourself that you have been auditioning for. Many of us have been so long in the role that we have forgotten there was a time before it. A time when we were simply present, without the need to be impressive or unbreakable or fine. A time when we could be exactly as tired as we were, as uncertain as we were, as quietly afraid as we were. That person is still there, not somewhere in the past, here, underneath all the managing and maintaining and controlling. You will not finish reading these words as a transformed person, and that is fine. Transformation in Buddhist thought does not happen in a single moment of revelation. It unfolds the way spring arrives, not all at once, gradually, almost invisibly, until one day you notice that the light has changed. What you can take from this is not a technique, not a system, not a list of things to do differently tomorrow. What you can take is a single, quiet permission. The permission to be exactly as uncertain as you are, exactly as tired as you are, exactly as unfinished as you are. And to discover that from that place of honesty, of not pretending, something moves. The life that was waiting beneath the performance begins to breathe. Life will still change. People will still come and go. Plans will still fall apart in ways you did not expect and cannot undo. But here is what changes when you stop fighting the river. Not the river, you. The exhaustion of resistance begins to lift, not all at once, but the quality of your days becomes different. There is a little more space, a little more breath, a little more of the sky visible beneath the clouds. You begin to notice that the moments you were so afraid of, when they arrived, you survived them, not by controlling them, but by meeting them, by being present to them, honest within them, willing to feel what they asked you to feel. You do not need to control everything to feel peace. You only need to loosen the grip, just a little. Open your hands and let the river flow. You are not finished with this work, but you are also not where you began. That is enough for today. That is more than enough. If something in this found you when you needed it, share it quietly with someone who might need it too. You do not have to say anything, just let it land where it is meant to land. And we would love to know, of all the things we talked about today, which one stayed with you? Which layer felt closest to what you have been carrying? You can simply type one word if that is all you have. Until the next one, go gently. The river is already moving. You do not have to push it.